In case you haven't noticed, our national press has pretty much pre-selected the candidates who are even taking part in any national televised debates. So it's a fairly foregone conclusion at this point that a few pre-selected people are going to be in the end race before the primaries have even taken place all over the country. So I'm sure you've heard about it and you're pretty tired of it as well as I am. Wanted to share some other news nuggets with you in case you haven't been or haven't had that time to research that on your own. Needless to say, the entire incident in the waters off the shore of Iran turned out to be another Pentagon propaganda piece, um, compliantly picked up by our so-called press here in the United States. And it got me to thinking, there was a few years back, I think it was in 2002, there was an office called the Office of Strategic Influence, which was set up by the Pentagon in 2002, and it became public. And Donald Rumsfeld at that time immediately came out and said, "Oh, no, no, this is outrageous, and we're not really doing this, and this office has been closed down." Well, as we now know, and as we can see through this incident, these speedboats speeding towards warships and superimposed language from people that we don't even know who they are, was basically coming out of that office, which evidently has not been closed down, but has somehow acquired another unknown acronym that nobody is aware of. So that's my commentary on the incident in the Straits of Hormuz, which has now been basically been debunked. And so the real trip for Bush's the real purpose for Bush's trip to the Middle East was not so much to cement his legacy as peacemaker between Israel and the Palestinians, like quite the contrary, in fact. There was a little news item which I saved yesterday. It came from Dubai's Gulf News, and that published a front page letter to Bush, and they launched a stinging attack on his administration's policy in the Middle East, chiefly its support for Israel, despite the oppression of the Palestinians. It said that we realize that containing Iran, selling more weapons, and securing cheap oil supplies are the main issues on your mind as you tour the region, the paper said, dismissing Mr. Bush's claim to want to solve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. As for the promise of democracy and human rights, which you are expected to raise in your official talks in the region, which he did raise in a pretty much ridiculous speech that you can look up all over the net. The paper says, your dreadful record on both gives you no moral right to lecture others, said the Daily, which listed a litany of alleged rights violations in Iraq and elsewhere. Now, this is, of course, what all of us who were against this war to begin with were predicting beforehand. And we have lost just all credibility all over the globe. And so people are just basically laughing at us. So that was one little nugget I wanted to share with you. The other one concerns the Real ID Act. And the Los Angeles Times headline said, the Real ID Act is postponed for 5 years And it goes on to say, the paper goes on to say, the Bush administration hit the brakes on Friday on a controversial law requiring Americans to carry tamper-proof driver's licenses, delaying its final implementation by 5 years until 2017. What the paper is basically skirting over, and which is not mentioned in the headline or in its first sentence of the paragraph, no brakes have actually been put into place. A number of states have balked at this law, objecting to it largely over the cost and over privacy concerns. But under the administration's new edict, states that continue to fight this compliance with the federal law face a penalty. And the penalty is their residents, the residents of those states which are protesting against this compliance, will be forbidden from using driver's licenses to board airplanes or enter federal buildings as of May 11th of this year. Now, I'm not sure whether the individual states, and there are quite a few who are against complying with this law. I believe there's 24 states. That's basically almost half the states in the union. I'm not sure whether they will launch a lawsuit against the federal government. I hope that they do and that they stop this legislation. But for right now, it is in place. And so come May 11th, you may not be able to board an airplane with your regular driver's license. You'll need a passport or some other identification which they seem to want. They didn't say what that is. So that's the second little nugget of news for today. And actually, it appeared yesterday. And the third, of course, was Mike McConnell, who has now been named the intelligence czar of America, now wants to basically collect, without any warrants whatsoever, all of our emails, all of our electronic communications. And he thought that it was very useful that Google is keeping all of these records on us. Every search, every email, and he believes that the NSA should be able to store all of that without any warrants whatsoever on every American, just in case. And he called this a zero-sum game, which means that basically if you want security, then your privacy is going to be canceled out. Now, I don't know how this is going to work logistically, of course. If you're going to store everyone's emails and private communications or business communications emanating from America, within America or anywhere else, we're talking about billions of pieces of data, which nobody can possibly analyze. I believe the CIA and the NSA combined have probably about 80,000 employees, and so there's no way that anybody can analyze any of that information in a purposeful way. So the potential for abuse for all this information to be stored in national databases is, of course, huge. And a lot of people are just going to get caught up in a web of faults and positives and so on. And heaven help you if you end up in that web, because it's not so easy to get out of it. There are several people who are on the no-fly list who simply aren't able to board planes anymore. So that is the third nugget for today, and I think that's quite enough. So let me know what you think about it, and I'll see you later. Bye.